prayer letter that came out, and I just got last week. He writes, on July 8th, we had a board meeting of Faith Christian Missions Incorporated. The big item of business was the unanimous election of Danny Bonikowski as the new executive director of the mission board. It has been my privilege to serve as director for over 15 years, but I recognize that it is time to make this change. Danny became a member of the board of directors 3.5 years ago, and now he'll take over. Flay says, I will continue to serve as president of the mission board, but all of us at FCMI feel very happy to have Danny take the leadership. He was born in Spain of missionary parents, Andy and Mimi Bonikowski, my son-in-law daughter. He accepted Christ at age 6. From that time forward, Danny has been active in the missionary ministry of his parents. The fact that Danny is bilingual is a plus in that the majority of our 32 families with FCMI are serving in Spanish-speaking countries. Then on a personal note, he mentions also, I appreciate your prayers as I go to Spain for a month this summer. So this just came out, so it must be sometime in August. I haven't heard exactly when. He's going to Spain for a month to visit churches and missionaries. I especially look forward to visiting the new mission church and Santa Pola Alicante, which was started this spring by the ELCHE church where Dennis Flower and I served for so many years. So that's got to be exciting. It's always fun for missionary-minded people to go over and see a church that's starting and, Lord willing, will be flourishing for many, many years to come. So continue to pray for Brother Flay Allen, and that'll help you to pray intelligently, okay? All right, Tychicus, a beloved brother. We're going to do a character study or a biographical study tonight. And this will be similar to what we've been doing in Sunday school, and yet a little bit different. A.P. Gibbs, in his book, The Preacher in His Preaching, says this, that a biographical message consists of the study of a person's life and the lessons to be learned from it, how we may be warned by his failures and encouraged by his successes. It is really the study of a person's character, which in turn determines his career, all right? Because you bring your character into your career. And we're going to see that this particular guy, Tychicus, a beloved brother, had the character that was definitely positive and useful to the Apostle Paul, and then by extension, of course, to our Lord. Now, his good attitude, his positive attitude, thereby affected his career, or we might say his service for the Lord. If you speak of my career, it's really a fair word still, but we often will switch it out for ministry. But what is my ministry? What is my career? Well, to serve the Lord and to serve people. And so in that sense, if I have good character, am I going to do those things better? Well, that should follow, absolutely, okay? All right, children, sometimes they're looking for good role models. Well, here's a good one for you. Get to know about this guy Tychicus and others in his realm, and you'll find some good guys to hang out with. I don't know about you, but I've always been on the lookout for good role models. Anybody else do that? I mean, it didn't matter if I was playing sports or some other area of life. I find somebody that knows a little bit more than I do, and I try to get in their back pocket a little while and learn a few things. It's just normal to me. I trust that it is to a lot of you as well. And children in particular might take that to heart and think about the people that they're going to emulate as they get older. Now, in order to best see his life, what I want to do is a little different, but I want to read every verse that lists him in it, and I'll read a few other verses as well. This guy Tychicus doesn't have a lot said about him. So if you have that sheet, it does list all of them. And where did my sheet go? Aha. Because I didn't want to have to turn to all of them. But if you have this, or if you'd rather turn to them, you'll find them in these various places, okay? So this is Acts chapter 20, verses 1 through 4. How many of you have these sheets? All right. Who would like to help me by reading a few of these and save my voice? There are 5 entries. I'll read the first one, and then I'll call on you to read 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Would that be okay? All right, here we go. In Acts chapter 20, this is what we learn about him. And after the uproar was ceased, Paul called unto him the disciples and embraced them and departed for to go into Macedonia. And when he had gone over those parts and had given them much exhortation, he came into Greece, and there abode 3 months. So this kind of gives us the background, the context. And when the Jews laid wait for him, as he was about to sail into Syria, he purposed to return through Macedonia. So he outfoxes, or we could say in this case, he outpauls them. And there accompanied him in Asia Sopater of Berea, and of the Thessalonians, here we go, Aristarchus and Secundus, and Gaius of Derbe, and Timotheus, and of Asia, and Tychicus and Trophimus. So we learn right away he's traveling. This guy we're going to look at is traveling with all these people around Paul. Ephesians 6, 21 and 22. Who will read those for me tonight? Who's got those? Brian?
Ye also may know my affairs, and how I do. Tychicus, a beloved brother and faithful minister in the Lord, shall make known to you all things, whom I have sent unto you for the same purpose, that ye might know our affairs, and that he might comfort your hearts.
Now, in connection with that, thank you, Brian. Let's jump down to the bottom one, because Ephesians mentions him, and then he says something interesting in 2 Timothy 4. Who will read 9 through 12 for us tonight? Rick, would you please? Thank you.
Do thy diligence to come shortly unto me, for Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens, and to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Only look is good. Take Mark and bring him with thee, for he is profitable to me for ministry. And Tychicus have I sent thee Ephesus.
To Ephesus. Very good. Colossians 4, 7 through 8. Who will read that one? Can I get one more reader? Colossians 4, 7 and 8. Mrs. Wagner?
Tychicus, the beloved brother and faithful servant and fellow slave in the Lord, will make known to you all my affairs, whom I have sent to you for this very purpose, that you may know about our circumstances, and that he may encourage your hearts.
And then last one, Titus 3:12. One more person. All right, I'll go ahead and read this one. When I shall send Artemis unto thee, or Tychicus, be diligent to come unto me to Nicopolis, for I have determined there to winter. So they do a lot of traveling at that time of year. So those are all of the references to him, but we're going to go ahead and look at some of them more closely. And we're going to start out with the first point I have tonight, is just simply his title. And then we'll look next time at his task. I don't think I'll get through all of this tonight. But let's look first of all at his title, or said another way, what was he known for? Or what was he called and why? Okay, so a little background about his name. You may remember that I was a Greek minor, and I'm a particular kind of guy when it comes to some of these things. But his name is actually pronounced Tychicus. Here's why. If you look it up in Greek, it's Tukikos. And the key sound is from the Greek letter chi. It's a letter like an X. And so when we transliterate it into English, they use CH like character, and it would be Tychicus. So I always said it that way, but most people I meet don't always say it that way. You can say it any way you want, but I wanted to just make that clear to you why I do. In the Greek, it actually is Tukikos, and it comes out Tychicus to us. Now, I call him one of the 4 T's. You see the T guys traveling with him? I don't know why Paul liked all these T guys, but he had Timothy, Titus, Trophimus, and Tychicus. And his name means fortuitous. Now, we don't use that word very much. Who knows what fortuitous means? Or fortuitous? It means fortunate. We would say today, what a fortunate guy. He's blessed in a sense. And that's what we would say today. So that's what his name actually means. Secondly, we see in Ephesians, so go there, Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 21. And I want to look at some of these references to him so that we don't gloss over them too quickly. I think sometimes we miss some of the detail because we've seen it so many times. We don't realize some of the meaning that's there. So in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 21, Paul calls him what? Well, he says, dearly beloved brother, he says in Ephesians 6:21. So let me read this to you again. But that ye may also know my affairs and how I do, Tychicus, a whom? A beloved brother. So that's the first title that we get. Paul used this for a lot of his friends, and I mentioned this in Sunday school this morning. Paul was very good at biting his tongue if he didn't like something someone was doing. He didn't have a critical spirit. He didn't say you did great on nine cases, but on the 10th one you really blew it. Paul just doesn't do a lot of that. He's very good about highlighting their strengths, and he uses this phrase a lot, so I think sometimes we gloss over it, but look at those two words together, and they're really quite special. Dearly beloved literally comes from the agape type love. That beloved is the agapetos love that we think of as the most sacrificial and sincere love that we know. And then dearly is adelphos, brother, dear, a loving brother. We understand adelphos, right? Brotherly love, city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. So maybe you know those two words. So those are the Greek words that make up a beloved brother. You ever talk about each other that way? We might say things like, he's my brother in the Lord, but to just say he's my beloved brother, it's a good phrase to use outside of your family even. And Paul used it freely, and Tychicus is one of them. Now, as with a relative, you're always glad to see them, right? Generally, anybody have an Uncle Joe? Uncle Joe, it's so good to see you. I've got some uncles on my dad's side that I was real close to. When I see them, Uncle Barry, Uncle Lou, and there's one other one, I won't mention his name quite so much, but when I see those two, it's just always so much fun to see them. They're funny, they're interesting to be around. They've been in my family ever since I can remember. And someday they'll pass off the scene and it'll be hard to see them go. But you understand the idea. When you say something like this, you're basically saying, how have you been? My dearly beloved uncle, so good to see you. What's been going on with your life? Sometimes we Baptists will refer to each other as brother so-and-so. It depends on where you are. One of our numbers, she'll often refer to me as Brother Boardman. And I'll call her Sister Lisa. You know of whom I speak now. And she just likes to use that terminology. It's very biblical. And some people use it more than others, but it has to do with the title of love and affection that Paul used regularly. And he goes on in the same verse, and what else does he say? He says, but that you may also know my affairs and how I do, Tychicus, a beloved brother and faithful minister. Those are really sweet words for someone to get. What does that mean? Well, it means trusty, faithful, set of persons who show themselves faithful in the transaction of business, the execution of commands, or the discharge of official duties. Faithful. Isn't that a lot of what Jesus is doing as he lays out the way to walk with him? It's that he's going to discharge some duties and you're going to take them and obey them. And if we do, we come up faithful, which is a wonderful place to be. You ever notice with children sometimes they're really good at one particular thing? You tell them to go get their brothers and sisters because it's time to eat, and what do? If they want to eat, they run out, and it doesn't take long. They've got them all in, and they're sitting down, and you're like commending them because they did your job for you, and you didn't have to chase them in the yard. And there they all wrapped around and get ready to eat. But as they get older, a funny thing happens. What happens to children as they get older? They eat more, true. But now all of a sudden they pause and they have to think about it. Well, but Mom, there's 4 of them and one's way out there. And yeah, but go get them, it's time to eat. And they hem and haw, and the older they get sometimes, the harder it is for them to just jump at it like they did when they're younger. Not so with Tychicus. He was still, at whatever age he is at this time, Paul calls him a faithful minister. And it begs the question, are you and I faithful ministers? Faithful servants of the Lord? You might say that Tychicus was Paul's right-hand man. Well, we say right hand, but how many of you are left-handed? You'd probably rather he be a left-handed man, right? We just never say it that way, but you understand the idea. He's well connected, he's up close. And I say that because Tychicus was comfortable, content with being the right-hand man. He didn't have to be the man. Tychicus never, and others that he mentions here in good light, they did not have the problem that some of these others we find did. Someone wanted to have the uppermost seat. Someone wanted to be numero uno, not Tychicus. By the way, you know how you say that in Japanese? You might have even heard it. I think there's a cartoon or something. You ever, what is it? Ichiban. Ichiban. Ichi is one. Ichi ni san, 1, 2, 3. Ichiban would be number 1, Niban would be number 2, and Sanban would be number 3. And you see that over there. Usually in the Japanese context, they use the Ichiban symbols in reference to safety is number 1. So they have a symbol for safety, and then it'll say Ichiban. They want people to remember and be thinking about all the time that that is number 1. But Tychicus didn't have that problem. He knew that Paul was a leader of this group of servants, and he was willing to let him have his way. Now, it begs an applicational question here. What title are you in the process of seeking right now? Now, some of you who are older, you kind of are past that. You're not vying for anything anymore. You're just thankful you made it to retirement and you're trying to enjoy some of the time to do the things you've always wanted to do. But do you remember those days, though, when you were jockeying for position, whether it was in the military or whether it was in some big company or even a small company? Jockeying for position and trying to be up top is just so common, unfortunately. Did Jesus ever have any followers that did that? Can you remember their names? James and John. They enlisted their mother to go in and get them the prestigious spot, one on the right and one on the left. And but Tychicus, just mark it down if you're taking notes for him. He's a humble guy. He's willing to do the things that he needs to do, and he doesn't seek any title in it. Jesus said this earlier. He said, beware of scribes which desire to walk in long robes and love greetings in the marketplaces and the highest seats in the synagogues and the chief rooms at the feasts. Man, he didn't hold back when it came to that. Tychicus doesn't have that issue at all. This title also carries with it the meaning of being a servant. A servant. Faithful servant. Do you like being called a servant? We should like it, shouldn't we? We shouldn't mind. But this word is pretty tough sometimes. Jesus said in Matthew 20:28, and you quote this with me, even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. What does it mean when he says he came to give his life a ransom for many? Was he taking the easy road? No, not at all. He was willing to give his life for it. And that's what his service to mankind required, his death, sacrificed it all for you and for me. He took servitude or servanthood to the nth degree. What is the nth degree anyways? I've used that phrase through the years. What is that, like beyond numbers? To the nth degree? Multitudinous? I'm not really sure. I like math too. I'll have to look into that. But he took it way, way up. And as our example, Paul says likewise in 1 Corinthians 11:1, be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. Serving. So if we stopped right there, how well is your service looking at this point in your life? And if you want a way to measure your service, just think of some results that you have. Is there any fruit from your service? If you've been serving the Lord, would there not be some fruit along the way that was tangible, measurable? I would say yes. How is your service looking? I'm going to take you a step further. He goes beyond these words and go to Colossians chapter 4 with me and see what's listed there. Colossians chapter 4. He adds more to his title. The same Apostle Paul. Similar terminology, but he adds one more title. Colossians 4:7, he says, all my state, or everything that's going on, shall Tychicus declare unto you, who is a beloved brother and a faithful minister, and what? A fellow servant in the Lord. A fellow servant in the Lord. Let me speak to that for a little bit. This fellow servant is made up of two Greek words. One is soon, meaning beside or in union with, and the other is doulos. Doulos. What do you know about the Greek word doulos? Why is doulos a little bit tougher than a servant? Hannah? A doulos was a slave. A slave who did all things that his master asked of him. Now I say him, could have been a mother, it could have been a spouse, and he was a slave under the wife as well. But he was willing to do those things that were asked of him by his superiors, if you will. Paul knew that he was a fellow slave of Jesus Christ. And Paul uses that title not like you and I would. Oh, you poor thing, you're going to be a slave after all this. When you see this, it's in line with the same praise that he's giving him in the other parts of it. Verse 7, let me read again. All my state shall Tychicus declare to you, who is a beloved brother, that's positive, and a faithful minister, that's positive, and a fellow servant in the Lord, a doulos, a slave together with the Lord, is a praise title, a praise statement. I'm not so sure we always see it that way. We don't understand that. But we should regard the opportunity to serve the King of Kings just as well, as if he's pleased with us and we're doing the right thing. Now, after saying that, do you not feel creeping up in your flesh that old desire that still wants to hang out up near the top, wants the best seats? I've told you about how in Vermont, Catholicism gets most of the glory. And if the priest walks into a store, 2 or 3 people will recognize him, ask him how he's doing. And I can walk in with a suit and tie and nobody will say anything to me. I could have a tag that said Pastor Boardman, Harvest Baptist Church, which was the name of our church at the time. Nobody would recognize me. They wouldn't care at all. And that used to bother me a little bit. But should it have bothered me? No, it shouldn't have bothered me at all. Because I'm not serving the community by my title. I'm serving them by getting down in the trenches and getting my hands dirty, rolling up my sleeves for the sake of the souls of those people. Does the Lord recognize the guy with a reverse collar just because everybody recognizes him when he walks in the store? No. Does he recognize his servant, Randy Boardman? Yes. He goes with me everywhere trying to bring fruit out of my efforts. But we have another illustration. Army buddies know what it's like to stick together like glue. Is that not true? They're just trained to care about and love one another, to live amongst each other. And no matter what happens, they will take their roles as sacrificially as anybody you ever find. Generally, there are a few exceptions, of course, but they're usually found out. They weed them out and they'll deal with them separately. But by and large, our military men really just want to take care of each other. They want to make sure that no one's left behind. They want to bring everybody back. They'll carry someone on their shoulders who's heavier than they are if need be. And I never understood how they did that. But they find the extra adrenaline and the energy to do it. And stories abound of their heroism. But every time you see those guys praised in the news, what do? What do they say? They're uncomfortable accepting it. They're doing what they were trained to do, what they think is the right thing to do. They don't need any glory. They just want to serve. There for a little while, they are a slave to the other guy that they're helping get off the battlefield. And so I ask you this question tonight. Are you content to simply be slaves to your master? And what does that look like? It's a hard question, I know. But it's one that we should take to heart. He uses almost a whole verse in Colossians 7 to describe this man of God that was serving with him. Someone once wisely said, there's always room at the bottom. The more people clamor to get up the ladder to the top, the more room there is for you to work and serve down here where the real people are. So I believe that Tychicus' title reveals to us his character in no uncertain terms. He was beloved, faithful, he was a fellow slave. I trust that God encourages you throughout this week to seek similar titles rather than always trying to go for some highfalutin thing that the world will recognize and the Lord will not. So that's all I have for his title. Let's look secondly at his task. What was he given to do? Well, go back to Ephesians chapter 6, and we're going to see some more things that I think we can apply to our week that's coming up ahead. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 21, what do we read there? But that ye may also know my affairs and how I do, Tychicus, a beloved brother and faithful minister in the Lord, shall make known to you all things, whom I have sent unto you for the same purpose, that ye might know our affairs, and that he might what? Comfort your hearts. So first off, we see here that he's going to show them his affairs. So they don't have texting. You know, Paul can't put on Facebook, hey, we just saw 3 people come to the Lord today. One of them was a Roman soldier. Praise the Lord. And then everybody rejoices all throughout that area. He couldn't do that. In fact, as people were spread out and Paul had traveled there and then come back and he wasn't there anymore, they might begin to wonder, well, we heard that Paul was encountering some scuffle here and some Jews were chasing him and then some Romans were after him again. And anybody know how he's doing? And here comes Tychicus. Hey guys, I'm here to tell you what's going on with Paul. And they all sit down and they're all ears. And they listen as Tychicus relates to them the affairs and how Paul's doing. Do you think he was in a good position at that time? Oh yeah, they'd be eating out of his hands. They'd be, the women would be in the back getting all these special foods prepared, snacks and things, and bringing them forward. The kids would be hushed in the corners, and they'd all be sitting on the edges of their seats hearing how their brother Paul was faring. So Paul knows that they're worried about these things, and the last thing he wants them to be is discouraged in the work of the Lord because of what they're hearing about him. So he sends off Tychicus, and others do the same thing as you read through Scripture, and he helps them to know that Paul is okay. Enough so that he says he will comfort you. Are you a comforter? Think about that. When Tychicus was handpicked by Paul, do you think Paul looked at these guys that he could send, these guys whose names begin with T, most of them, and do you think it dawned on him that, hey, these people might need comforting? I've heard a few stories. Some of them are struggling. Tychicus is my man. Do you think there was anything about the man Tychicus that drew Paul to him? We can't answer that question affirmatively. But whether Tychicus was already that way or he just grew into the part as he traveled to get there and tell them, he was a man that Paul knew could bring comfort. When's the last time you comforted someone? And what does that look like? What does it look like to comfort someone? Feel free to tell me. What does it mean to comfort somebody? Put your arm around someone and sometimes just be silent and be there for them. Did you grow up with that phrase, you're there for me? I didn't hear that much growing up. My kids use it now, and we'll get cards and stuff for holidays, and it'll say things like, thank you, Dad, for always being there for me. I'm not really sure I understand that as well. We didn't say that when I was growing up, but I think I understand what they're saying, and I'm supportive to them. And I would hope that it also includes comforting them when they need it. But I'll be honest, I wasn't always known as a comforter. I don't know if maybe you even still think, yeah, Pastor, you really need to work on that. You make me uneasy. But it's a good thing to be. Are only women designed to be comforters? No, of course not. In fact, how would he bring comfort if he weren't good at comforting people? What other type of comfort is there besides putting your arm around someone and walking with them for a while? How else can you comfort someone? Brian?
You often, or if you're a good listener, and then interject words of understanding.
Instead of correction? Yeah. How many of you guys, give me a second, Ms. Wagner. How many of you guys have had to have your wife tell you point blank, I don't want you to solve it, I just want you to listen? Yeah. Anybody ever been there? They don't really always want you to solve it. They just want you to listen. They want you to walk with them for a little while. They want you to be understanding. Mrs. Wagner?
Well, if someone in the church or a neighbor or whatever is going through a certain situation that you've gone through and God has brought you through it, you can share with them how God was faithful to you and how He
Amen.
brought you through it and how He'll bring them through also.
And I would say,
Comfort them with the comfort that you've been given.
I would go a step further, not that you wouldn't say the same thing, but I would add to that, you may have been given that specific trial just so that you would be ready and able to help the next person who comes up with it. It's not an accident that you're in the right place at the right time to help people who are going through something that you've been through, because you can relate to it. You may remember when Amy and I lost Benjamin. He was only 9 days old. It was our first child. Our world was just spinning. We weren't sure how to hold on to a whole lot. And what does the Lord do? Out of the woodwork comes an older couple, not a lot older than we were, but in their 30s. We were in our 20s. And they said, we lost our first child too. Would you like to come visit us and we'll talk about it? And we're like, oh, that's a no-brainer. It's the first place. We got in our car and flew down to New Hampshire. I know that doesn't make sense, but we got down there quickly. And they just ministered to us for like one day, 24 hours, stayed overnight. And they were keenly aware of what we needed and how to know when to talk to us and just let us be alone. And it was just to know that we weren't the only ones who had been through this was so helpful. And we were tremendously comforted. When we went back home to Vermont, it was like a tremendous burden had been lifted off. Well, I say off of ours. I don't remember all the emotional state that my wife was in after we left. But for me, it was just so helpful to have them to now lean on if we wanted to call them or anything else about that after the fact, and we could. So the trials and the challenges that you go through often become the seed ground for somebody else who's going to come in behind you who needs to hear your story. And we should actually be on the lookout. We don't advertise that we lost our first son, but we're paying attention when we find out that people have. Did you know recently Pastor Alexander's son and daughter-in-law lost a child? And I don't remember the circumstances entirely, but we asked you to pray for them, and we did. And then Amy and I drafted just a sweet card to them and said, hey, we know a little bit about what you're going through, and we explained a little bit about losing Benjamin at 9 days old. And if they ever wanted someone else to talk to, we know you don't know us, but if you want to talk to us, we'd be glad to listen. And we gave them our phone number. We didn't hear from them, but we took an opportunity to at least let them know. And maybe the Lord gave them other family members that were there, church family or someone. And you know, sometimes you just need one person to talk to and you get it sorted out. You don't need to keep carrying it on. Just need one person. Are you that one person that can listen and not always have to have an answer right away and be a blessing? Let me say this too. I went in one direction, but there's another direction I see here. And that is Paul is sending Tychicus to another church to do what? To tell them of the affairs of Paul, to inform them, if you will, and then to comfort them. Do you know that in our state, there are a lot of good Baptist churches who aren't all super excited in their current predicaments, their current situations? Is it possible that God would have us be an encouragement to some of those other churches out there too? When I was in Vermont, there were a lot of churches that were struggling because you're under tremendous spiritual warfare all the time. And then if something goes wrong in the church and now the money's not there and you got a congregation of 35 and we're not sure we're going to pay for it, now that's another burden. And then a third thing comes in. You find out that one of your families is having marital problems and maybe someone's contemplating a separation. And the spirit of the church just going really, really fast. And so in fellowships up there, you're paying attention to how your brothers are doing, because if they're going through 2 and maybe 3 hits all at one time, they need you to come visit them. They want you to stop in and say, brother, let's go get coffee. Just tell me what's going on so that I know how to pray and you can get some of this off your chest. And I think a little bit of that would go a long way, even in our state. Is every church in Alabama doing great? We don't even know. Can't answer the question because we're not close enough to them. The only church that I spend any time with at all is Pastor Alexander, because he's good at reciprocating. If I call him, he answers. If he calls me or texts, I answer. And we have a relationship now. So I know a little bit about what's going on. I know some of his challenges, and he knows some of ours. And it's a wonderful thing to have at least one. Now, I have another really good friend I've known longer in Pastor Malloy, and he's down in Florida. But it's not hard in our era to just pick up your phone and call him. Or I'll text him and say, hey, is this a good time to give you a call? I just want to run something by you. I heard something recently. What do you know? And see what he's heard. Has he got his ground to the ear? And you hear some interesting things from other pastors. And so it's a real blessing. So note that that's what's going on here too, is that Paul always had a heart for the other churches. And don't let us become, is the right word cloistered? Is that a good word? Don't become so ingrown and we don't know what's going on with our brothers and sisters in other churches over time. Let me give you an example, if you want to be practical. Curtis and Lisa have traveled back and forth to a church up in Tennessee for years. Ever since I've known them, they spend about 2 weeks here, then 2 weeks up there, and they talk of their pastor up there, a guy named Chester. And Curtis loves the guy. And not that he doesn't love us, but he'll share with me things that are going on, and would I pray for him because this is going on, and say, absolutely, I can't wait to meet the guy someday. Why? Because I can relate, right? Is everything peaches and cream for me? No, and so I can pretty much guess probably not everything's peaches and cream for Brother Chester up there in Tennessee. Now, they're actually staying into Alabama up in the Huntsville area, so they may end up in a different church. I don't know how far it'd be to go up there. So I'll start hearing about another one.
It's not far.
It's not far to where he was? Well, knowing them, they'll make that trip, and they'll spend some time there because they have sweet brothers and sisters up there. What am I getting at? All around the country, there are pastors and people in churches like this one who are not always as encouraged as you might think. And that's one of the reasons, if I may put a plug in, why we list other churches in our bulletin. How many of you, no, I don't want to put you on the spot. Some of you might not even know that's there. Do you know where it is? When you get your bulletins each week, we have a box. When I first came here, that box was in the plan, and I thought, that is a great idea. I'm going to keep that. And it lists the missionary of the month so that they get a whole month of special prayer, hopefully. But then it also says pray also. Oh, I used a terrible example. This was the first week in a long time. I ran out of space, so guess who I dropped out? I dropped out the other church. But usually in here we'll have the Galvins and what's going on with them. We'll have the family of the week, which was the West. We'll have a ministry of some kind, and I bounce between evangelists, camp ministries, and universities, colleges. And then I'll have in there also a church usually within 3 or 4 states of us, somewhere on the border of us, so it's not so far away. Encouraging you to pray for them too, because whatever we're dealing with might be what they're dealing with too. And so I just want to give you a practical look at that, because I think Paul knew what he was doing when he sent back a comforter like the disciple Tychicus, to encourage them and comfort them when they're needed. Most of you will pray for people that way, and that's good. But is there a step you could go further? Who's planning to travel in the month of August? Anybody besides the Galvins? They have the opportunity to maybe think of somebody along the way that they can encourage, family member, a church. Hey, pastor, is there a church on the way to wherever we're going that we could just give them a call and say, hey, we're praying for you. What can we do for you? Do you know what it would do for me if somebody called up and said, hey, pastor, you're the pastor at Central Baptist, right? And I'm not putting pressure on you too, don't get me wrong. But I think it's a good idea. And he says, hey, I'm coming through town, and I'm not a missionary asking for money. I'm not an evangelist asking for a service. I don't need anything. I just want to be a blessing to you. Would you let me buy you a breakfast? And I'd say, who is this guy? What would be my first thought? He's a scammer. What do we say? There's another way of saying he's a scammer. There's a string here somewhere, right? And but you never know. But that's how my point is being made that way. We are so far removed from this kind of connection that Paul was pushing for, that we would think the guy was up to something if he called you and said, hey, can I take you out for breakfast? So let us be mindful of these things and take some of this to heart, because this is good stuff. I know it doesn't seem deep, but this is good stuff that Paul gives us regarding this particular guy. And we'll see some more of it as we go. There's a lot more to his task. Hang with me, and we'll pick up here next time, probably next Sunday night, okay? Let's sing again, and then we'll pray. Let's stand as we sing.